In the world of cryptocurrencies and digital coins, sky-high inflation and fiat currencies, the prospect of central bank digital coins are looking more and more likely by the day. But a lot of people don't really seem to understand what they actually are, how they would actually differ from electronic money that we have today, and what that might lead to in the future. Now, despite what you might think, they're not just cryptocurrency versions of our current currencies, and they're not just digitized versions of what we have right now either. The truth is, there are so many possibilities here, so many different ways central bank digital coins could actually work, that no one really knows for sure what the end result will be. But we do know that the results and the consequences of this idea that many governments seem intent on pursuing will cause monumental and far-reaching changes to the world that we live in today. Nonetheless, there have been some developments recently. Countries and institutions that have started making strides towards implementing CBDCs, and really, this is just the start. Today, we're going to take a deep dive into central bank digital currencies, or CBDCs as I'll call them, and explain everything you need to know about what's coming next. But first, leave a like and a comment to bless the YouTube algorithm. If you want more content like this, then check out our Patreon and join our community of investors. You get access to our Discord, loads of exclusive content like private live streams, extra videos, and buy and sell alerts for my own personal portfolio. So what's the news that is spurring this video on, and why am I making a video dedicated to educating people about CBDCs? Well, just the other week, the Federal Reserve announced that they were going to be creating a new innovation center in New York, and one of its express aims is to research and develop a central bank digital coin. This is obviously pretty huge news. The United States is the largest economy in the world. It's the most powerful country in the world. It's the world hegemon. But more importantly, the US dollar is the most used currency in the world. It's so widespread that if you walk into a shop in a random third world country, there's a decent chance that whatever US dollar bills you have in your pocket will be a more than welcome sight to that shop owner. Pretty much every central bank in the world uses the US dollar to maintain the integrity of their financial system. The dollar is the world reserve currency. If you want to ensure your government can continue to function throughout any financial crisis, then a hefty supply of US dollars is practically mandatory. The only countries who choose not to have US dollars backing them do so because they don't want to be vulnerable to US sanctions or aid the value of the dollar. Essentially, they're in competition with the US. So what really is this innovation center, and what does it mean for a digital US dollar? Well, it's an institution that has been built with the express purpose to assist the Federal Reserve, the United States Central Bank, as it explores the possibility of a digital currency, assesses the financial risks associated with things like climate change and changing geopolitical climates, and things like financial market infrastructure and regulation. Basically, it exists to help the Federal Reserve keep up to date with all the new innovation going on in financial markets, and especially with any developments with other countries and their central bank digital coins, but also to help the Fed themselves develop a digital coin. The Fed is supposedly working on a paper right now that will explore the policy issues surrounding a digital bank currency, what it might mean for the people and the economy, and whether or not it might be a good idea. Now, the way the Fed have phrased all of these announcements make it seem like this is just as much about keeping up to date with technology as it is about developing their own digital currency, and the Fed seem quite keen to keep the truth behind whether or not they're actually developing one a little secret. In my opinion, though, this really isn't a question of if, but when. There will be a digital dollar at some point in the future. It's just the direction the world is going in, and if the US insists on maintaining its current financial systems, it will get left behind as the rest of the world innovates. It's no secret that other countries, which always seem to be looking forward and trying to usurp various hegemonic roles from the US, countries like China and Russia, are already developing and even using central bank digital coins, and for them, there isn't even an attempt to hide it. So what is going on in the rest of the world then? Well, as of last month in China, their digital currency has been used for almost $10 billion of transactions. There are 140 million people who have digital wallets for the currency, and there are 1.5 million merchants who take payments in it. On top of that, there are also 10 million corporate accounts, and this has all come over the course of just 1 year, while the digital currency is still technically unlaunched as a work in progress. The CCP gave out the equivalent of around $30 to everyone who opened a wallet for the digital coin throughout 2020, which helped to encourage normal people to use it in basically the same way that El Salvador encouraged its citizens to use Bitcoin. Now, the People's Bank of China, or PBOC, has claimed that the purpose of the digital coin is to maintain monetary sovereignty, as the popularity of cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin and Ethereum has been skyrocketing all over the world, but in China especially. This has coincided with multiple attempts by the Chinese authorities to clamp down on cryptocurrency use, and they've been making crypto more and more illegal every few months for the last 5 years. The idea behind the PBOC's digital coin was that it was a more efficient and easier to use version of the standard Chinese currency, and that would help to ensure that consumers wouldn't want to switch over to cryptocurrencies due to the difficulties of using cash or just traditional digital finance. There are also claims that the digital currency could work with offline payments, meaning people who aren't necessarily as tech savvy as others wouldn't need a smartphone. Of course, stating this as a potential benefit is a little bit rich, considering how it isn't a feature that's currently present, and on top of that, you can buy things with cash regardless of any technology, and even debit and credit cards can be used without access to a smartphone. The reality is that this digital coin is more about government surveillance and control than any potential efficiency gains, as the CCP and the PBOC claim. The digitised coin would allow literally every transaction to be easily monitored by the authorities, for any single coin can be tracked indefinitely, and it would also allow for restrictions to be placed upon certain people's spending, which is particularly terrifying when you consider how happy to violate individual freedoms the CCP is. It's not exactly a secret, it's even well known at this point as fact, but social credit scores in China are a real thing. And if you, as an individual, maybe say something anti-government online, or you meet with people with the wrong ideas, you can have life-changing restrictions placed upon you, like not being able to use public transport or use other services. If the government were able to literally freeze your account, or put blocks on how much you can spend or what you can spend your money on, then the ability for the CCP to abuse its citizens would simply get far, far worse. The digital currency could also help China reduce the impact of the American economy and the US dollar on their own economy, and it could make it difficult for economic sanctions to be effective if transactions happen purely in this digital currency. We could see this be the start of the fall of the dollar as the world global reserve currency, and with that, we could see the destabilization of the US economy. Now, while China's digital currency is already in use, it really didn't happen all that quickly, as it's really been in development since 2014, but the apparent success of the digital yuan has spurred on many other nations to start developing their own, either outright or at the very least to look into developing their own. In the United Kingdom, the Bank of England has started to discuss the idea of a digital currency issued by themselves. They've pointed to the fact that digital money as we know it today is sort of uncontrolled, as unlike physical paper or coins, it isn't issued by the central bank. It's created by banks and financial institutions. It looks as though, if the Bank of England does go in this direction, that control over the entire monetary supply could be the direction they go in. A similar story in Europe seems to be developing as well, with the Digital Euro project, intended to investigate the case for a digital class over the next 2 years. Now, while they are by no means moving at anything faster than a snail's pace, the ideas here are really what you would expect. The digitised euro would supposedly make it easier for transactions to take place. It would give the European Central Bank more control over the money supply. And if we've learnt one thing over the last year about the European Union, it's that control seems to be its primary motivator. Now, while the prospect of a Chinese digital currency isn't exactly good and is actually a fair bit worrying to billions of people, there are some legitimate benefits to digital currencies that we could see, especially if we see digital dollars, euros, and pounds. Now, the first and most obvious benefit would be the streamlined processes for transferring money from one person or account to another. It's no secret that this process is slow and often laboursome, and it is worse in some countries in particular, and surprisingly enough in the US, but pretty much everywhere could see some improvements. Now, as someone who has always lived in the UK my whole life, I never knew that Americans don't really have free bank transfers. It's just something I never even thought about for the longest time because I thought it was so basic, and I only found out when I was looking into companies like Cash App and Venmo because I just couldn't see the appeal. More recently, I've had the displeasure of having to make and receive payments internationally, and it is just a ridiculously bad, slow system, having to mess around with SWIFT codes and IBANs, and this is an area where central bank digital coins could really streamline the process. Now, a lot of people seem to forget these days, but money and currency has always been evolving. Going back tens of thousands of years, bartering was the only way to trade with other people, to allow individuals' comparative advantages to be utilized to push society forward altogether. Humanity adopted various different currencies to make trade easier, but they all had certain things in common. They allowed for large amounts of value to be easily moved, but the evolution of money obviously didn't stop with gold and silver. Banknotes were initially literally just pieces of paper which were issued by an individual bank to denote physical coinage. Eventually, control of almost every currency was transferred over to the state, but innovation marched forward. Even our physical notes these days are better than they used to be and harder than ever to copy, harder than ever to destroy as well, but all of this has had a ticking clock lying above its head. Digital currencies are already far easier, more efficient and quicker than physical notes ever could be. Moving towards a system that's entirely controlled by the state is just the next step in progress, just like the same was true when central banks took over control of printing physical notes as well. Central bank digital currencies are on their way to being at the forefront of our economies, and while it may take years or more likely decades for them to really take hold in our lives, that is the direction we will end up. The Fed's new Innovation Center and their new remit to research and even develop central bank digital coins is not going to have an impact on us for years to come. And if there's one thing we can be sure of, it's that bureaucracy thrives under state-run organizations, and if nothing else, that means at least a few more decades of our current monetary system. Lots of people have it stuck in their heads that central bank digital currencies are just cryptocurrencies issued by central banks, but the reality is far different. These likely won't be built on blockchain technology, even though they might benefit from that in the long run. They likely won't have consensus methods that we see in the crypto world like proof of work or proof of stake. They won't have initial coin offerings or be highlighted by Robinhood and Coinbase as the next tokens to 100x. They can seem scary, especially to those who fear what the government might plan to do with powers that CBDCs could grant them, and especially to those who live under governments like the CCP, who frequently abuse human rights on a massive scale. But the reality is, for most of the people watching this video, CBDCs are probably just going to make things a little bit easier, a little bit faster, and a little bit more streamlined. Over the course of the pandemic, we saw discussions surrounding the phasing out of physical cash from our economies, and the consensus is that it would be an awful idea, so that's probably not on the way anytime soon either. And while it is possible that our Western democracies turn autocratic and use the implementation of CBDCs as a way to hold us all down underneath their boot, that is a very unlikely outcome, and it isn't something that we should really be actively worrying about today. If you enjoyed this video, then leave a like and a comment to bless the YouTube algorithm. If you want more content like this, then check out our Patreon and join our community of investors. You get access to our Discord, loads of exclusive content like insight into my portfolio and buy and sell alerts for all my own personal investments. There's a link in the description to masterworks.io, a site that allows you to buy fractional shares of art from world famous artists like Banksy, which can be a great way to diversify your portfolio with non-market correlated assets. It's completely free to sign up, you don't have to buy anything, you don't have to hand over any card information, so if that sounds interesting then make sure to check it out. There's also a link in the description to BLOCKFI, which will give you up to $250 in free Bitcoin when you use it. You can also get 9% interest on stablecoins like USDC, which is a far higher rate than you'll get from any savings account these days. Just make sure not to use Tether. Thank you all for the support, thanks for watching, stay stoic, until next time.